Hey everyone, it's time to Nephis and chill. In this video we'll be going over the 5, or rather 6, item sets that all DPS players should have if they want an easier time potentially joining and also helping in raids. Even tanks and healers should strongly consider getting these sets, as the sets can be extremely useful to have in a variety of different scenarios depending on your raid composition, itemization, and of course the boss or trash fights themselves in trials. Included in this video for each item set are some example setups that were retrieved from the private ESO logs of endgame raid groups, so definitely pay close attention. So, first item sets we're going to talk about is War Machine and Master Architect. Post-2021 and post-2022 hybridization changes in ESO essentially made both of these item sets the same exact item set, with the only difference being that Master Architect gives maximum magicka and War Machine gives maximum stamina. This setup right here comes from a DPS spec giving Major Slayer, and it's very important to note that what this doesn't show you is the off tank also giving the Major Slayer from using one of these sets to their group in Veteran Asylum Sanctorium hard mode. Note the key term here, Veteran Asylum Sanctorium hard mode. So, depending on the trial, you may need to use it, you may not. In this example, however, the player is combining a full damage-oriented item set such as Kinraz's Wrath with a support DPS item set, Master Architect. And this is done in this trial specifically, as typically both the healer or support players won't be able to optimize their own setups or for the group by equipping a Roaring Opportunist and Yorvold's Guidance build setup to offer their own Major Slayer to the group. Here are also another couple examples of other use cases on a DPS and a healer, respectively, from left to right, for other kinds of fights, including combining this Major Slayer item set with another support item set we'll talk about shortly. As you can see from these setups, the DPS has Catalyst and War Machine. On the right, we have the healer having the typical heal setup with Symphony, One Piece with the pearls, but they also have Master Architect, and they're also offering, you guessed it, another support item setup, which is often interchangeable between tanks and healers, Saxhlyl's Champion, although we won't be talking about Saxhlyl's Champion in this video. Next up is Elemental Catalyst, which we just mentioned. It's essential for almost every trial encounter as it boosts the critical damage stat of both yourself and your entire group. As of update 36, the critical damage cap is 125%, and Elemental Catalyst offers a free 15% critical damage increase towards that cap for your group, allowing other people to perhaps use a different warfare slottable in place of things like Fighting Finesse, or even replacing the usage of minor force skills such as Trap or Channel Acceleration, depending on scenario or setup. This is a net positive gain for your group DPS, as more people will be doing more DPS. Here are some Catalyst setup examples, and a reminder that this set does not proc off of enchantments as of 2022. So in the first setup here, we do have someone wearing another support set we'll be talking about, by the way, Martial Knowledge with Catalyst. Note some of the skills and stuff they're using, because I'm going to talk about that here shortly. Second example, kind of a similar setup, but this time they're pairing with Sororia, or you could do Reliquin or some sort of other damage set with Catalyst. And speaking of Reliquin, here's a third different setup that someone else is using, that for a different fight, they are using Reliquin and Elemental Catalyst with the usual Harpooner's Kilt and the Slime Crawl One Piece. But, as you can see from these different setups, all of them have one thing in common. Have you guessed it? Necromancer. The class in itself makes it a lot easier to keep up Catalyst due to them having sources of fire damage, shock damage, and frost damage like from Skull, Mystic Siphon, and Boneyard. It's literally built for them. Catalyst as an item set synergizes incredibly well with the Necromancer class, and it's not too much of a player skill heavy item set to use for the benefit of your raid teams. Of course, you don't have to be a Necromancer or even a DPS to use a Catalyst set. You can be a tank in specific scenarios, such as this example right here for Asylum Sanctorium hard mode, or even fights like Yonokrin hard mode, where a tank could potentially wear Catalyst. In this example here, we have the tank wearing, Encradus's Behemoth. giving that extra fire damage boost. And they're wearing Yonakrin, and guess what they're doing as well as their secondary item setup? It's Catalyst. And note that since they're not a Necromancer and this is a Dragon Knight, they're going to be using other sources of ice and lightning damage, because as a Dragon Knight they have fire damage already. So how did they get ice and lightning damage apart from procs or enchantments? Well, they use a ice staff and a lightning staff. Now, the next item set we're going to be discussing is Zen's Redress, which gives a unique 5% damage debuff modifier on the target to the entire group, including the user of the item set, and this will always be in play for all single target or boss fights. Much like how Catalyst synergizes really well with the Necromancer class, Zen's Redress synergizes well with the Dragon Knight. In fact, you can see from my previous Zen's Redress guide video, or even the article on the ESOU's website, why that is. And of course, it's damage over time effects from Dragon Knight. Here's some examples of setups with the Zen's Redress. First, you have the damage-oriented setup. I hope at this point you guys are noticing common theme here. Support item set plus a damage-oriented item set. And this is with Zen's and Sororia with 2-piece Ice Heart, just as an example. Of course, we also have, on the other hand, we can set up Zen's Redress with this kind of setup, with like Sororia or Reliquin, or we can set it up with other support item sets, such as Alkosh or even Martial Knowledge, which we will also go over. The below example is even from the front healer in Asylum Sanctorium hard mode, doing both the Zen's Redress and Martial Knowledge for the benefit of the group. So in this setup, we have a kite healer for the most part. They don't really have too many heals because the main tank in Asylum Sanctorium hard mode, for the most part, in experienced groups, don't really need too much external healing from other people to survive Olms' swipes, right? And the healer here is focusing primarily on not just maintaining their stamina pool for Martial Knowledge, which again we'll talk about, but they're also maintaining damage over time effects on Olms with Zen's Redress. But yeah, let's move on to the next one, Martial Knowledge. I keep bringing it up. Like Zen's Redress, Martial Knowledge is also a unique damage boost for the group in the form of a 8% damage debuff modifier on target. However, unlike Catalyst and Zen's Redress, it does demand a higher level of skill play with managing your stamina pool to be below 50%, but not too low to the point you won't be able to cast skills or roll dodge or block just like the rest of the group may need to in certain fights. On the video, here's some setups with Martial Knowledge. For the first one, we have a damage-oriented setup with Coral Riptide and Martial Knowledge. As of update 36, depending on the fight or depending on how you set up your food and stuff like that and whatever, Coral Riptide may not be the best choice for pairing with Martial Knowledge, because Sustain is pretty good as a result of hybridization, a bit too good. So something else, maybe like Reliquin and Martial Knowledge, for example, could be good. Another case example here is going to be Martial Knowledge with a proc set, such as, Pillar of Nirn or Whirl of the Depths. Usually most Martial Knowledge users do pair this item set with a damage-oriented item set, unless they're asked to use Elemental Catalyst with it, which is not too common. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, is Roar of Alkosh. It was previously a must-have staple set that tanks had to equip from 2016 up until 2021. It was meta for literally over 5 years for the tanks to wear this set, but after many iterations and changes and patch notes and patch changes, it finally became more suitable for the DPS players to wear Alkosh. As of update 36, the best raid composition and itemization lean towards medium armor DPS for the most part, which means they often lack the penetration from not wearing light armor. That means for boss fights in particular, in order to reach the penetration amount of 18,200, which is the resistance cap of all bosses in the game, a DPS needs to wear Alkosh for the medium armor composition. This is probably the most demanding item set next to Martial Knowledge in terms of player skill, as it's imperative a DPS player not mash the synergy button and time a synergy use roughly every 9 point some seconds to 10 seconds to keep it up basically 100%, and it's even more intensive if it's only on one bar depending on your setup, which means you can't synergize on the bar that it isn't active on. Now obviously, just like with the other item sets, you can do Alkosh plus a damage set, You could do Alkosh with a support damage set, like here with Master Architect, or you can even, as you know, very popular as it is right now, you can do Alkosh with Zen's Redress on things like Dragon Knight. Obviously, Alkosh is kind of like irrelevant to the class, but depending on how you want to do it, oftentimes a lot of people do go with Alkosh with Zen's Redress on the Dragon Knight and vice versa. But yeah, that's pretty much it to talk about in terms of all the really important support DPS item sets. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean you just get these sets and then you're automatically accepted into the first raid team you see. However, the most demanded role or things from raid leads, besides support players or raid rosters, are people who can run these item sets. Any player can parse or be a full DPS parse monkey, but not everyone wants to be the person that helps contribute to that number. Oftentimes a lot of people don't have these item sets ready, or can even use a couple of these. So if you're having a hard time breaking into the raiding scene as a player, having these item sets will definitely help your chances with a lot of raid leads. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Definitely do like and subscribe for more ESO and other amazing content. Stay safe, stay healthy, have fun, and I'll see you guys next time.